Lesson 9.6 is yet another way to figure out how to solve quadratic equations. And this is using the quadratic formula. Dun, dun, dun. You will learn to love the quadratic formula. You're going to have to memorize the quadratic formula. Sit here and stare at the screen and say it over and over and over and over again. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Let's say that again. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Hey, maybe we should say it again. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Woo! Again, you gotta memorize that. Sorry. So, what exactly does this mean? Let's remember that the standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals y, or equals 0, depending, whatever. Okay, so the first step is to get this in standard form. In order to do that, I'm going to have to take my equation and I will subtract 2x from both sides. I want to write it in standard form, so my equation will be x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Now that we have it set equal to 0, we can plug it into our quadratic equation to solve for the solutions. Again, the equation is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So let's do some math, work it out, plug everything in. We know that our a is here, our b is here, and our c is there. So when we plug everything in, we get a negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 8 all over 2 times 1. Alright, so just giving myself a little more room to work with. This was what we ended up with on the last slide. So let's do some simplification. Negative becomes a positive, so we have 2 plus or minus the square root. Negative 2 squared just becomes positive 4. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 8 would be a positive 32. And that will all be over 2 times 1, which is just 2. Let's go ahead and keep on doing some simplifying. And if we continue simplifying, we get 2 plus or minus the square root of 36 over 2. We know the square root of 36 is 6, so we get 2 plus or minus 6 over 2, which means that we'll break out into two equations. We will have x equals 2 plus 6 over 2, or x equals 2 minus 6 over 2. Solving those out, we'll get 8 over 2, which is 4, or 2 minus 6 is negative 4 over 2, which would be negative 2. Let's go ahead and do another one. Again, we want to make sure it's in standard form, so first I'll subtract 21 from each side. And my new equation is x squared minus 4x minus 21 equals 0. So we want to plug that into our quadratic equation. The quadratic equation is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2 times a. So let's get plugging away. B is negative 4, so we have a negative negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 21 all over 2 times a, which is 1. So let's go ahead and give ourselves some more room to work, and let's get simplifying. Negative 4 would make a positive 4, plus or minus the square root. Negative 4 times negative 4 would be positive 16, minus negative 4 times 1 would be negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 21 would be a positive 84. Remember, negative and negative makes positive. 4 times 21 is 84. All over 2 times 1, which is 2. Let's keep breaking this down so we can simplify it even more. And we have 4 plus or minus the square root. 16 plus 84 is 100, all over 2. So our equation now is x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 100 is 10 over 2. So we have two possible equations. We can have 4 plus 10 over 2 or 4 minus 10 over 2. 4 plus 10 is 14. 14 over 2 is 7. 4 minus 10 is negative 6. Negative 6 over 2 would be negative 3. So x equals 7 or negative 3. Those are your solutions. Now sometimes the problems will throw a curveball at you and you'll only have one solution or you'll have no solutions. And the way we determine this is by using our discriminant. The discriminant is just the part inside of the radical, b squared minus 4ac. That is what we call our discriminant. You can tell whether you'll have one solution, two solutions, or no solutions just by looking at your discriminant. If you calculate b squared minus 4ac and it's a positive number, you will have two solutions. If you calculate b squared minus 4ac and it equals 0, you'll only have one solution. And if you calculate b squared minus 4ac and you get less than 0 or a negative number, you will have no solutions. So I know we've learned a lot of different ways to solve equations, solve quadratic equations. So here's when we use what? You use just square roots if there's not an x term in the equation. So if you have x squared minus 9, you just solve for x, the old-fashioned way using square roots. You use factoring if you look at the equation and you can easily factor it and you know the factors. Right off the bat, don't have to do anything complicated, you're set, you're ready to go. You use completing the square if the coefficient of the x squared term is 1, but you can't easily figure out what the factors are. And then finally, we use the quadratic equation or quadratic formula if the equation cannot be factored easily or can't be factored at all. And honestly, the quadratic equation will work every single time. I'm really excited about today's joke. I'd never heard it before, but anyways. So, there was a lady standing between two goalposts. What was her name? Annette!